Hello and welcome to Pop Screen, part of the Geek Show podcast network. We are that corner of the Geek Show that likes to look at the good, the bad, and the preposterous of movies either starring by or about pop stars. Another podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a video artist and a writer for The Geek Show and Byline Times. And I've been joined this week by...
It's Andrew. Hello again, everyone.
Hello.
As if you need reminding, I am the host of the Behold podcast, which covers comics and movies and TV shows based on comics even. It's fine, Graham will fix that in post so I don't sound like a fool. And yes, I'm also a pretty regular guest on this here podcast.
You are, yes, covering a broad range of stuff. I think this is the one that we've done this probably most in your wheelhouse, as it is based on a comic book. So it's got a bit of your day job podcasting.
It is really, really uniting the two halves of my life.
So, Andrew,
in the spirit of a sort of crossover between Pop Screen and Behold, I'm going to start it off in the way you often do and say, Andrew, what's your knowledge of Tank Girl?
My God, this is what it's like being on the other side of the mirror. So, yes, admittedly, Tank Girl, I know of Tank Girl. I've had a bit of Tank Girl. Probably not my area of expertise, I'd say. But then, can Tank Girl really be anyone's area of expertise?
Yes. Yeah, I haven't seen an edition of Mastermind where anyone's picked this as their specialist subject yet.
Yes, like, I could not explain to you many of the elements of Tank Girl, but I think even if I had read every single issue of Tank Girl, I could still not explain to you many of the elements of Tank Girl.
I agree. I think it's very much in that sort of vein of comic books which works on cool juxtapositions and irony rather than aiming to make perfect, consistent world-building sense.
Yeah, I think it's very much that 90s sensibility of kind of punky, we don't actually have to make sense. This is our comic. We can do what we want.
Yes. Yeah. And yet, while I am aware that the comics creators, Jamie Hewlett and Alan Martin, were not happy with this film, so I don't want to take it as like a perfect reflection of their sensibility. I think compared to a lot of the stuff that was being called gritty and adult and groundbreaking in 90s comics, Tank Girl feels pretty trash.
Yeah, it is. It's refreshingly gonzo is what it is.
Now, part of it is, and I'm aware that this is going out in like a month or two's time, so this may be the most dated reference in history by the time I make it. But Tank Girl herself is messy, antisocial, has poor personal habits, is permanently horny,
No.
has absolutely no regard for anyone around her, and yet is still strangely likable. So what I'm asking you is she Brat?
It's like, you know, when you're on a train track and your foot gets caught in one of the tracks, and you can see the train coming towards you, and you know what's going to happen, but you just can't get out of the way. That was the last 10 seconds of my life. But yes, Tank Girl is Brat.
I think there is something really sort of unself-consciously feminist about Tank Girl. It doesn't feel like people trying to make a feminist statement. It feels like a group of women who have been given leeway to do something that appeals to them, and this is the result.
Yeah, which, I mean, I realize I'm about to step into territory that is very much not my bailiwick. But I think maybe in a way that makes it more feminist than a film that's actively trying to. I don't want to say push a feminist agenda, because then that makes me sound a bit like I'm saying I just want there to be less politics in my video games.
Yes, no, I get what you're saying. I agree, and I think even people who didn't agree would be impressed with your use of the word bailiwick.
Thank you. That made it all worthwhile.
But yeah, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this, because on release, this was, of course, a big fat flop, one of the biggest and fattest of the decade.
Indeed. And I think, to be fair, A lot of Tank Girl isn't necessarily a good film. Like, the pacing is very weird.
Yeah.
Tonally, it kind of goes from wacky Looney Tunes to, and then Tank Girl's entire like adopted family was gunned down, and she was subjected to many months of psychological torture.
Yes.
And then she kissed a kangaroo man.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people will have been waiting for us to get onto
the fact
this is probably the only like explicitly pro-bestiality blockbuster of its era. Nowadays, you can't move for them, obviously, but back then...
Yeah, I assume that's what happens when you get those sexy Stan Winston special effects.
Yes. And Stan Winston, who does a grand job here, like, when does he ever not do a grand job? But Stan Winston is one of many people who did this film for less than their usual fee, because the comics, the Tank Girl comics, were just so impeccably hip that it was just something that you didn't have to ask people to be involved with. People, came knocking at it's an MGM thing, isn't it? Tank Girl. Let me just check.
Yes, I think so. I remember the line at the start.
Yes, yeah, they came knocking at MGM's door to be involved with this.
Yeah, unfortunately, they came knocking at the door of a bunch of squares.
Yeah. Do you think that's the main problem here? The old music movie nemesis of the squares who just don't get it, man.
I think it is, because I think reading a bit around it, both Rachel Talalay and Alan Martin and Jamie Hewlett have complained that the main thing is just producers always coming in and, as in their words, not getting it.
Yes, I found a fabulous quote from Talalay, who says that some of the executives objected to the fact that, and I quote, "the only good men in the film are mutant kangaroos," which is one of the less popular second wave feminist slogans. The fish and the bicycle was the hit of the movement, but that one was a bit weird.
Yeah, an underrated sentiment, I would say.
Yes. But I think that people who were unfamiliar with the madness that both the comic and the film consist of probably need some grounding. And fortunately, the opening of the film gives you a massive info dump.
Indeed. Delivered by Laurie Petty in just the most lackadaisical. Oh yeah, there was a comet. Most of life on Earth is wiped out. There's no rain now. We live in the desert. Yes.
Yeah, I admire that, because that's one of the things that I think has really shifted in science fiction cinema in the 21st century. It feels like after stuff like Children of Men and Mad Max Fury Road, people have accepted that the audience will follow world building just because they are interested in the world and they observe what's happening in this world and they understand it. They don't need to have someone at the start of Children of Men going,
and then everyone just stopped having babies.
Yeah, at least someone has learned from the terrible cut of Blade Runner where it's just tired Harrison Ford. Like, it's the future and there's robots and I've got to hunt him. And
but as you point out, you could definitely not say that Lori Petty sounds tired in this. She sounds like she's taking the piss, but she sounds like she's doing it in character, I think.
yeah, which to be is very Tank Girl.
Exactly, yes. So yeah, it's post-apocalyptic. The society has been devastated by, I understand in the comics, it's nuclear war, but I guess someone thought that was a bit passé after the Cold War ended, so it's a comet here. And Rebecca Buck, which I understand was never her name in the comics.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, in the comics, she's just called Tank Girl.
Yes, because that is the first of the film's more esoteric pop links. There are obvious links to music in this film, and we'll get onto those. But one of the more buried ones is that when MGM asked Hewlett to pick a name for Tank Girl, he chose Rebecca Buck. I can't remember where the Rebecca comes from. I think it was someone he knew. But Buck was because he was a massive R.E.M fan at the time and is named after Peter Buck.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I thought that was cool as well. So she's living in a commune, but God, don't get too attached to anyone in there. Am I right?
Oh yeah, they last slightly more than 5 minutes, so longer than some relationships I've had.
Yes. Yeah, and the
But
rest
no,
of it
they are
is
also just the most archetypical. May as well have just a gravestone like tattooed on their forehead.
they do, yes, yeah. They've got some character. I like the kid with whose T-shirt is just wanker written in the
Yes.
Jamie Reed Sex Pistols font. I think they were banking on quite a lot of American executives not knowing what that meant.
And it worked. It got past him.
It got past him, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to find out what the MPAA certificate for this is because it's quite odd tonally. You know, I mean, you've said it was tonally odd, but it's odd in just in terms of what is permitted because you'll be sort of enjoying it as a fairly PG-13 blockbuster, and then suddenly Tank Girl will be sort of laughing and kicking a quite grisly severed arm around, which does not happen in many MCU entries.
No, and maybe that's why they've been struggling of late.
That'll be it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can't find what the MPAA thought of this, although I think bafflement is a safe bet.
Yeah, obviously, but maybe that's how it got through. Just can't complain about it if you don't understand it.
Yes.
But no, just thinking back to because I watched this on Amazon. I think it was a 15.
Yeah, I think it was too. I don't know if it's one of those like PG-13s that goes a bit past the BBFC's tolerance, but yeah, I think it was 15, and it feels 15 certificate. It doesn't feel like as strong as something like Deadpool or the Suicide Squad, but it definitely doesn't feel like a standard comic book movie of the type that we get now.
Yeah, I mean, especially because some of the comic scenes it does include feature Tank Girl. I think, fully naked.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've just found out it's an R rating, so yes, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Although,
because that's the MPAA. You can have
yeah,
as much blood as you want, but if we see even a hint of nipple,
yes. Let's talk about some of those drawings that you mentioned, though, because they are like the most obvious thing that I think wouldn't be in a modern comic book adaptation.
yeah, having it literally just like cut to comic panels for some of it,
Yes.
which on the one hand, I think does help give it a nice sense of visual flair. On the other hand, I think it gets increasingly clear as the film goes on that they just didn't film some of the scenes.
Yeah. Hewlett has confirmed that. And I think it's a shame. I think when you look back at a lot of superhero movies made, even as late as something like Ang Lee's Hulk, there is a sort of anxiety in them where they're like, how do we make people accept a movie based on a comic book? This is going to be the hardest thing imaginable. And they end up like really hammering home the fact that no, it's not based on a novel. It's not one of the ones that's from an old TV series. It's a comic book.
Yes, it's based on a comic, so these scene transitions have to look like comic panels.
That sort of thing,
Like,
yes.
no, Emily, no, they don't.
It is one of those parts of superhero movie prehistory that looks weirder the further we get on. And yet, for all, as you say, it is clearly a cost-cutting exercise. I think it works here. I think out of all of the 90s films that aren't sure if they're allowed to be about a comic book I've seen, this manages it the best, probably.
Yeah, and again, I think it helps play into that tone of the idea of, well, now everyone knows you can't just have a film cut to like random cartoons or comics, and this one was not going to do it anyway.
Yeah. But I think it helps establish the kind of affectlessness of it. That I think when it is at its best, it's at its best because it embraces the kind of really nihilistic, cynical, but still playful attitude of its heroine. It accepts the fact that, hey, the world's ended, nothing's going to get worse from here. So, nothing matters all that much.
Yeah, I think talk about that kind of brings in, that's maybe the most interesting part of the film, when Tank Girl's like a prisoner of, I'm just going to call him Malcolm McDowell because he's Malcolm McDowell.
Yes, he totally is.
But that like clearly has some very overarching themes of like oppressive regimes trying to crush down on people, but just resisting through just sheer like deterministic silliness.
Yes, yeah. And I
Like
think
just
that's very good.
refusing to be broken is like genuinely like quite good filmmaking.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's part of the sort of British inheritance in it. We are very good at producing heroes who flourish because they refuse to take villains that seriously. And I think that's a pleasing sort of aspect of this.
Yeah, just the idea of there's like no situation dark enough that you won't just meet it with a silly joke.
It's quite funny, really, because the film pitches Tank Girl's jokes as like evidence of her being slightly mad. I mean, you like her and you're meant to find her funny, but you are also meant to think that she seems kind of insane when she kills 12 people and then makes a joke about it. And and now, of course, that's like the basic thing that action heroes do, particularly in comic book movies.
Yeah, that's like every Iron Man film.
Yep, totally. Yes. Yeah, so you get into there's this very interesting moment from a pop screen perspective where they're in that factory that Malcolm McDowell playing, as you say, Malcolm McDowell uh, owns. And you can tell, even though Tank Girl is still as snide and as glib as ever, you can tell that things are getting serious because it stops playing like post-punk or grunge and plays Roads by Portishead, which is how 90s blockbusters let you know that shit was going down.
Yeah, but it's like they don't have a doomsday clock, they just have like a 1 to Portishead scale.
They do, yeah. They have a doomsday clock, but it's like a cuckoo clock, and Beth Gibbons pops out of it and starts being doomy. Yeah, and this is what she means, Jet Girl.
Yes, who confusingly doesn't have a real name, she's just Jet Girl.
It's quite weird, that, isn't it? Yeah, maybe they fought so hard for Tank Girl to have a real name that no one had the fight for Jet Girl. And is it Sub Girl, the other one?
Yeah, Sub Girl, who I think only appears in like one scene as a cameo.
Originally, Talalay said that there were like big plans for Sub Girl. She was going to be in quite a lot of it. But yeah, that got cut out. Do you know who auditioned to play her?
I think is that Bjork who tried to be
It
her?
was Bjork, yes. Yeah, this is
I mean,
full of
she would fit in this film, to be fair.
totally. I think it's a shame that Bjork isn't in there. I admire the fact that Bjork very rarely appears in movies, but when she does, it's something that is so mercilessly on brand that you kind of think, oh yeah, of course Bjork's in this. Why wouldn't Bjork be in this?
Yeah, of course, Bjork is like the weird fortune-telling Norse mythology thing from the Northmen.
Yes! How could you make that movie and not have Bjork in it?
I don't think she even auditioned. I think she just showed up to set work that exact moment.
Yes. Yeah. So yet another buried pop resonance in there, but Jet Girl is even more interestingly cast these days because it's only Naomi bloody Watts.
I know, like young, fresh-faced Naomi Watts.
Incredible. She's got dark hair, which is wild again.
Yeah,
She's
and
got
she
her
wears
own
glasses, so that's how you know that she's not that attractive.
Yes.
Naomi Watts.
Yes, yeah. She's got dark hair. She's got her own accent. She's wearing glasses.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. I think this is maybe the only thing I can think of where Naomi Watts actually has an Australian accent.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's like when you hear Saoirse Ronan do an Irish accent, and there's a second where you think, "Oh, that's a good Irish accent. I didn't know she could do that," and then
Yeah, clicks on it.
remember.
Oh no, wait, that is her accent.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a time when that this was like the dark secret in Naomi Watts's career after like she broke through with Mulholland Drive and The Ring. That this was kind of an embarrassing. Did you know she appeared in kind of trivia facts? But now she's been in the Book of Henry. We can probably celebrate this, right? It looks very dignified.
Yeah, I think. God bless you, Colin Trevorrow, for setting the new low. Just build in an extension right on the bottom of that barrel.
Yes.
But no, I think one of the nice things about Tank Girl, I mean, obviously, it would have been nicer if it had been a hit. But the nice thing is that even though it was a bomb, like it has become this cult classic. And it does seem like everyone's still in a position where they can enjoy the fact that, oh, it is nice that people like appreciate this film now.
Yes.
Like Rachel Talalay didn't, disappear off into obscurity and depression. Like heck, she's directed Doctor Who episode. She's doing fine.
There was a time when pretty much every Doctor Who season finale was directed by her.
Yeah, she's like one of the go-tos. And
Totally.
Laurie Petty, she's like done plenty of stuff, and I think she's still basically like a cult icon.
She totally is, yeah. And I really like Laurie Petty. This is actually the second Laurie Petty film we've done on Pop Screen this year, because she's also in Glass Shield, the great, great Charles Burnett cop movie with Ice Cube. And yeah, she's great.
No.
Yeah.
She cannot be in a movie with Ice Cube and with Ice-T.
There we go. There's the bridge. Yes.
God, I've danced around it so hard, but here we are. Ice-T.
Yes. I vividly remember an interview with Ice-T in New Musical Express, which I used to subscribe to when I was a teenager. And this was when he was at his most notorious. It's when he was the guy who released Cop Killer. It's when he was the guy who was in Body Count. And
the original OG.
Yes, yeah. And someone dared to ask him, "You were playing a kangaroo in Tank Girl. What was that all about?"
I know, it's such a wild choice to have it as a kangaroo man.
It fits very well with the person we now know Ice-T to be, which is like, when a lot of gangster rappers say they don't give a fuck, they mean we would like to be seen as very tough and hard. Ice-T really doesn't give a fuck. Like, if Ice-T wants to go from releasing Cop Killer to being on one of those Law and Order things for about 5 billion episodes, he'll do it. If Ice-T wants to strike up a Twitter friendship with the late Roger Lloyd Pack from Only Fools and Horses, he'll do it. He doesn't give a fuck. And he doesn't give a fuck in this movie either.
Yeah, he is truly free from society's constraints.
Yeah.
Like, what's that? I'm going to be a kangaroo man and I'm going to have dreadlocks and a bandana?
Come on! And there is a joke in this film, because all of these like kangaroo men are genetically engineered to breed the perfect soldier. They just started with kangaroos because why not?
I mean, to be fair, have you seen real kangaroos?
Yeah, and maybe they saw that picture of the really buff kangaroo
That's
that
the
was
exact
going
one I'm thinking of.
around.
Like, that's the Steve Rogers of kangaroos.
That's the one that started the program. There's some secret government division that is just obsessed with breeding clones of virally popular animals, and they're like, "Oh, the Mudeng initiative didn't produce the badass army soldiers we wanted. Better go to the buff kangaroo."
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that the buff kangaroo is part of how the culture has come round to Tank Girl, because I remember on the internet when that was big, quite a lot of people thought that kangaroo fucking wasn't as weird as they did back in 95.
Yeah, now we get it.
One of my favourite anecdotes about the production of this is that Stan Winston Studios did develop a costume for Booger the kangaroo that was anatomically accurate.
You mean it had very big feet?
That's it. Yeah, it had a pouch. They put a little kangaroo. No, they made a cock. They gave it a cock.
Good. And again, those damn squares. They didn't know what's hip. They didn't know what's happening.
They didn't know that the kids are desperate for some kangaroo man dick.
It was really the brat of its time.
Yeah, I mean, the kangaroo Tank Girl having a boyfriend who is a kangaroo is absolutely canonical, right? That's how it is in the comics.
Yeah, he's like one of the main characters, Booger.
Yeah. So, nowadays you could just point to that. They'd say you don't want like armies of insufferable people arguing that you have somehow made it woke by taking out the bestiality. You don't want that. You got to keep it in. But back then, they had to actually argue for the heroine to commit bestiality, which is
God, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that conversation.
yes. I mean, this is not even the first film we've reviewed together that has a disturbing interspecies romance, because I was on the Behold episode about Howard the Duck.
Oh, yeah, that is the theme that links us.
That's it.
Anytime.
A comic book adaptation has the heroine fuck an animal. We're here. We're here whenever you need us.
Yeah, that's a very niche mission statement.
Yeah, we are the A team of horrifying bestialist superhero movies.
I mean, God, fingers crossed we get more Werewolf by Night content.
Yeah. Yes. But in the end, it is pretty tame. It seems weirder because it's so tame. You just see them like lounging there post-coitally, and you're like, is that what they saying?
Yeah, I think the problem is it's one of those things where because you've censored it, my mind then has to fill in the blanks.
That's
And
it.
my mind is a cesspool.
Well, if they dealt with it up front, there's a chance that you could make it kind of bawdy and outrageous, whereas it's just quite sinister when you do it like this.
Yeah, it's always worse when you can't see it.
Yeah, totally. As I'm sure Rachel Talalay argued when the studio ordered they remove the shots of kangaroo dick.
Anyway, I feel like we never actually finished the original point that Ice-T plays a cop in this, which is very funny.
Oh, yes, he is. Yes. Which is doubly funny now because, of course, he has played a cop for about 1 million episodes of Law and Order Special Exploitation Unit or whatever the hell it's called. Yeah,
Yeah, that's some sort of like character development, isn't it?
totally. Yeah. It's a joke that's funny twice. At first it was funny because it's like, Ice-T playing a cop? What? And now it's just found another layer.
And that's why Tank Girl belongs as like one of the most notable films of all time.
Yeah, that's why it is, I'm pretty sure, the only comic book adaptation.
Certainly the only one that can be considered art, I'd say.
Yeah, Scorsese watched this and he was like, I've been too hasty.
Yeah, hold on, Marvel. Clearly I'm in the wrong.
But the other thing about this horrible bestiality plotline is that it does, like, comparing the relationship between Tank Girl and Booger to Tank Girl and Jet Girl does tell you that, like, 90s Hollywood considered homosexuality as like about on a level with kangaroo fucking in terms of what you can get away with in a mainstream film.
I don't know what you're talking about, Graham. Tank Girl and Jet Girl are good friends, possibly even roommates.
They do feel, yeah, future historians will be charmed at how this friendship has lasted so long through the ages. Yes. But Tank Girl had a huge lesbian fan base. Apparently, like, the comic launched just months before Section 28, and by the time of the first anti-Section 28 protest marches, there were already loads of Tank Girl t-shirts on, like, all of the women marching, which is so cool, I think.
Nice, yeah, and it makes sense because even if you do want to argue the fact that she's straight, which is wrong, but like the whole point of the character is she's very like unconventionally what a woman, especially in a comic, can be.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And, I think Petty and Watts do have incredible chemistry together. I mean, Naomi Watts is giving the sort of performance that now you would go to Sydney Sweeney for, where she's like, very shy and withdrawn, but in a way that lets you know that there's a freak, there's a brat under that exterior.
Yeah.
I think
At some point she's going to take those glasses off and shoot a man in the dick.
she is, and she does, and it's great.
It is, and then she blows on the gun, and young Andrew has a very important moment.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it does sort of lead you into speculation about how this is going to be made now, because of course Margot Robbie has announced that she has the rights to the comic, and as much as Margot Robbie is currently Hollywood's answer to every single question, I think you'd be pushed to name anyone around now who is a better choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely because there is like a very strong through line from Tank Girl to Harley Quinn and back
Totally.
again.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, but you know, the challenge is, can you make a mainstream film that is this unbelievably horny now?
Possibly not. I think maybe Margot Robbie and let's just say Sydney Sweeney's Jet Girl, why not? But I think they probably have some like very firm handshakes or something.
Yes. Yeah. It does feel half of this film feels like we have finally caught up with it, and half of this film feels like you're just watching it thinking the 90s were a time.
They certainly were. I mean, you couldn't make a film like this today, mainly because Margot Robbie owns the rights, and so she probably would sue for copyright infringement.
Yeah, I would argue that you couldn't make a film like this back in 1996 because people would have said, but we did it the previous year. It lost millions of dollars. Why do you want to do it again?
God, and that's what's wrong with the world these days.
That's where woke started. Yes. Yeah, but there are things in this that are so deliriously head-spinningly 90s, not least the fact that as well as a quite sort of a sort of ordinary score by Graham Revell, a score that has its moments but feels like it's trying to drag it back into being a more conventional blockbuster. This has one of those amazing 90s blockbuster soundtracks where like every song is by an alternative rock big hitter who has nothing to do with the movie at all. Absolutely nothing.
Oh yeah, well, not entirely, because we do have a couple of Bjork songs on there, and she's, I guess,
True.
tangentially related in that she was nearly in it.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and welcome to my new podcast where I interview people who weren't in famous films. But yeah,
That would be a good podcast.
you've got like Devo. I think in fact Courtney Love even was the one who helped like make essentially the playlist for the film.
Yes, yeah, it's got Bush, so you know that it's a mid-90s soundtrack. It's got L7, Belly, Ice-T, naturally, is on there.
Yeah, you've got can't remember their name, but Blank Generation.
Yes, yeah, Richard Hell and the Voidoids.
That's it.
Yeah. And you also have Iggy Pop, who is the other pop star who sort of slipped through the net of this film, sort of almost casting loads of pop stars, but him and Ice-T managed to get through.
Yeah, and what a role Iggy Pop chose.
Yes.
Like they really did say on that. Well, we do need someone to play this paedophile that Tank Girl's going to rescue the little kid from. And Iggy Pop was like, sign me up.
Like, oh man, Bill Wyman's numbers engaged. Who else do we get? Yeah, I mean, I love Iggy Pop, but the man has made some errors of judgment. Just a year after this, he would release his song "Look Away," which has an opening lyric where you just think, Iggy, what the fuck are you doing? And here he is playing a nonce in the Tank Girl movie.
I mean, as much as I love him, he does have a horrible face that works for playing a nonce.
He definitely does. Yeah, yeah. I mean, most Iggy Pop appearances are kind of in jokes about Iggy Pop, right? The classic example is The Dead Don't Die with the Iggy Pop zombie that just looks like Iggy Pop.
I assume that zombie's not wearing a shirt.
It is not, no.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's wild. It is such a short appearance, but he does get memorably maimed, so I guess that's the fun part of it.
Yeah, I think that's why you sign up for something like that, so that you can be killed in an entertaining fashion.
Definitely, yeah. Some more musicians who were not quite cast. I mean, there were, as you would expect, there was a huge search to find someone who could play the title role. Talalay claims that at least 2 of the Spice Girls met in the queue to audition for this.
Could you imagine a world where the Spice Girls are in this film?
I cannot, no. It's almost as hard to imagine that one of the other auditionees was Brick Smith from The Fall. I mean, imagine if the Spice Girls had met her in the queue and started a band.
My God.
I've often felt that the Spice Girls lacked a krautrock influence.
I mean, that's really changing the shape of human history type stuff, isn't it?
It
Well, the
is,
Great
yeah.
Wives of our time.
What if there was a direct line from Marky Smith to the Spice Girls?
Yeah, God, I'm just trying to remember because Radio 6 had a cover of something by The Fall today, and I can't remember what song it was. But just the idea of all the Spice Girls being this like wall of electro noise.
The Spice Girls being a John Peel favourite. It could have happened. We could have had it all.
God, oh, well, let's shed a tear for the lost Spice Girls indie subculture.
I think by the time we're fantasizing about the Spice Girls releasing Hex Induction Hour, we've probably got towards the end of the show. But is there anything else that you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
Malcolm McDowell has a holographic head.
Yes! That was what we thought the future looked like in the mid-90s, Andrew.
And we're worse off for it not being.
Totally, yeah. I'm really eager for like us to get rid of this generation of tech barons who grew up misunderstanding classic R.E.M. Banks novels and get on to the generation who want to make the future a bit like Reboot.
Yes.
That's what's
Give me
going
that
wrong.
beautiful, beautiful early 2000s CGI.
Absolutely.
Where the
Yeah.
most terrifying villain imaginable is Megabyte. Can you imagine the power of Megabyte?
But yes, yeah, I think that covers it. I enjoyed this film a lot. I'm gonna say it. There are certainly things wrong with it, but I am of the Tank Girl cult.
Oh yeah, I would say Tank Girl is probably the worst film that I absolutely love.
Yeah, that's fair. And I just want to raise a glass to Laurie Petty, wherever she is, whatever sort of character role she's doing now. But you have been in 2 absolutely baller movies in this year of pop screen, and you have made my 2024 a little bit brighter by it.
Yeah, she is just an absolute delight.
Also, like to say hi to Naomi Watts. No idea what happened to her after this, but I trust she's doing well.
Yeah, probably went back, did some smaller roles, I think.
Probably on Home and Away or something, yeah.
Yeah, didn't she get married to Tom Cruise at one point?
But yes, if you enjoyed this episode of Pop Screen, we do a monthly bonus episode on our Patreon, as well as written reviews of, I think I'll have just wound up the X-Files series by the time this goes out. I know Mike's working on a Twilight Zone rewatch project. We still do Fantastic Asia, our monthly articles about Asian cinema we love, and many, many more things. But until then, Andrew, just remind people where they can find you online.
Yep, you can find me by searching for the Behold podcast. Our latest episode is on Deadpool and Wolverine.
Don't know why I pulled a surprised face when you said that. That's probably the sort of thing that you'd be covering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, given the fact that like the main thing we agree on is that we're both Deadpool fans, probably the most on-brand episode for us.
Yes.
But also, don't let that ruin the mystery. Maybe we hated Deadpool and Wolverine. Who knows? Ooh.
There is a corner of the multiverse where that's true, but not this one. And yes, you can find me at the Geek Show or at the Geek Show Patreon, and also on Letterboxd. Just search for Graham Williamson, and on Instagram at Graham W Film. But until fortnight's time, when we'll be back with, I think it's Last Christmas, the Wham-centric rom-com that we're doing next time. I've been Graham.
And I've been Andrew.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.